Scary story killer at gas station. The sodium vapor lights of the quick stop gas station cast a sickly orange glow on the desolate stretch of Highway 17. The wind, a relentless, icy predator, whipped across the asphalt, carrying with it the scent of exhaust fumes, stale coffee, and a faint, metallic tang that hung heavy in the air. For Sarah, the night shift at the quick stop was a lonely existence, a monotonous cycle of ringing up truckers, stocking the shelves, and trying to stave off the overwhelming boredom. Tonight, however, was different. The first sign of trouble had been the unsettling quiet. The usual chorus of 18-wheelers rumbling past, their engines a familiar lullaby, was absent. Then, the power flickered, plunging the store into a moment of near-total darkness before the backup generator kicked in, sputtering to life and restoring the dim, flickering light. It was after that the sense of unease really took root, creeping into Sarah's bones like a chilling fog. The only customer for hours had been a grizzled old trucker with a missing tooth, who had paid for his coffee with a stack of crumpled bills and muttered something about the wind changing before driving off into the night. The second sign was the fog. It had rolled in silently, a dense, swirling mass that obliterated the horizon and swallowed the surrounding trees. It was a thick, unnatural fog, the kind that clung to everything, muffling sounds and distorting shapes. Sarah, a practical woman by nature, attributed the unsettling atmosphere to a combination of fatigue, caffeine withdrawal, and the encroaching winter. But the feeling of being watched persisted, a prickling sensation on the back of her neck that refused to dissipate. She checked the security cameras, a routine task that usually provided a sense of safety. But tonight, the feeds were blank, static-filled screens that only amplified her growing unease. It was then that she heard the first whisper, a low, guttural sound that seemed to emanate from the fog itself, a barely audible murmur that brushed against the edge of her hearing. She dismissed it as the wind, but the whisper came again, and then again, each time closer, more distinct, a chilling voice that seemed to be calling her name. Sarah, her heart leaped into her throat. She spun around, her hand instinctively reaching for the baseball bat she kept behind the counter for protection. Empty store, empty parking lot, just the swirling fog and the oppressive silence. She tried to rationalize it, to convince herself that it was just her imagination, a product of the long, solitary hours. But the feeling of dread intensified, her instinct screaming at her to run, to get out. She decided to lock the doors, to hunker down and wait out the night. She activated the deadbolt, a heavy metal bar that slid into place with a satisfying thud. As she turned to walk back behind the counter, she saw it. A figure, standing just outside the glass doors. Tall and gaunt, its features obscured by the fog. It was motionless, its presence radiating an unsettling aura of stillness. Sarah froze, her blood turning to ice. The figure didn't move, didn't speak, but it stared at her through the fog-drenched glass. The whisper came again, closer this time, as if the figure was the source. Sarah, she backed away slowly, never taking her eyes off the figure. She could feel her heart pounding against her ribs, her breath coming in shallow, ragged gasps. Then, the figure raised a hand, a long, skeletal hand that seemed to extend impossibly long. The fingers were thin and gnarled, ending in claws that glinted in the dim light. It tapped on the glass, a slow, deliberate tapping that echoed through the silent store. Tap, tap, tap. Sarah finally broke, turning and running to the back room, a small storage space crammed with boxes of snacks and cleaning supplies. She slammed the door shut and leaned against it, her body trembling uncontrollably. She fumbled for her phone, but of course, there was no signal. The fog seemed to be blocking all communication, trapping her in a nightmare. She could hear it now. The figure was moving, its footsteps heavy and deliberate as it stalked towards the back of the store. The whisper came again, closer this time, right outside the door. Sarah, she knew that she was trapped. There was no escape. She grabbed the baseball bat and held it tight, her knuckles white. She would fight. She would not go down without a fight. She took a deep breath and steeled herself, preparing for the inevitable. She had to try. The door burst open. The figure stood there, silhouetted against the dim light. It was even more terrifying up close. Its face was a pale, distorted mask of features, its eyes burning with an unholy light. It lunged. Sarah swung the baseball bat, connecting with the figure's chest. The blow landed with a sickening thud, but the figure didn't flinch. It simply staggered back, its gaze never wavering. It lunged again, its claws tearing at her, ripping through her clothes. She screamed in pain, swinging the bat again and again, each blow connecting, but doing little to deter the onslaught. She fought with a desperate ferocity, swinging the bat, kicking and scratching, trying to push it back. But it was no use. It was too strong, too fast. It grabbed her, pinning her against a wall. Its claws dug into her skin, drawing blood. The whispers grew louder, filling her mind, urging her to give up, to succumb to the darkness. It's no use, Sarah. Give in. She fought against it, resisting the whispers, refusing to surrender. But the figure's grip tightened, its claws digging deeper, its eyes burning into hers. Then, something shifted. The figure's features seemed to waver, its form flickering, as if its grip on reality was starting to loosen. Sarah, in a desperate move, kicked hard at the figure, connecting with something solid, and it stumbled back. Then, she saw it. The figure, the monster, was now exposed. It had been human, the old trucker with a missing tooth that paid in crumpled bills. She looked at the figure, who had now clearly stumbled back, the same look on its face as the rest, horror and confusion. She started before she passed out from the wounds and the pain. When Sarah woke, she was in the hospital, bandages covering her wounds. She learned that the police had arrived, that it had been gone, and the fog disappeared when the emergency services got there. She heard a local news story. They had found the abandoned car. The truck driver with the missing tooth was never seen again. But then she felt the whispers again. Sarah, the figure, had been the driver and still whispered to her, even now. Panic flared in Sarah's chest. The whispers weren't gone. They were still there, lurking in the shadows of her mind, waiting to reclaim her. She frantically called for a nurse, her voice trembling. She tried to explain what she was hearing, but the nurse just smiled patronizingly and assured her that it was just the medication, a side effect of the trauma. But Sarah knew better. The whispers were real. The monster was still out there. She checked herself out of the hospital against the doctor's orders, driven by a desperate need to escape, to find a place where the whispers couldn't reach her. She drove for days, heading west, putting as much distance as possible between herself and the quick stop, between herself and the monster. She found a small town nestled in the Rocky Mountains, a place so remote that it barely registered on the map. She rented a small cabin on the outskirts of town, surrounded by towering pines and snow-capped peaks. She thought she had finally found peace, a refuge from the nightmare that had haunted her for so long. But the whispers followed her. At first, they were faint, barely audible, like a distant echo. But they grew stronger with each passing day, more insistent, more menacing. She tried to ignore them, to drown them out with music, with television, with anything to distract her mind. But the whispers were relentless, penetrating her defenses, worming their way into her thoughts. She started seeing things, shadows moving in the periphery of her vision, faces leering at her from the darkness, figures lurking in the woods. She knew that she was losing her mind. The whispers were driving her insane. She contacted a therapist, hoping to find some relief. But the therapist just told her that she was suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, that she needed to confront her fears and process her trauma. But Sarah knew that it wasn't PTSD. It was something else, something darker, something more sinister. She started researching the history of the quick stop, the history of the area, searching for clues, for answers. She discovered that the highway had been built on an ancient burial ground, a place where Native American tribes had performed ritual sacrifices. She learned that the area was known for strange occurrences, for unexplained disappearances, for sightings of shadowy figures lurking in the fog. She realized that the monster wasn't just a random truck driver. It was something ancient, something evil, something that had been drawn to the area by the ley lines, by the residual energy of the burial ground. The quick stop was a nexus point, a place where the veil between worlds was thin. The whispers were the voices of the dead, the tormented souls trapped between worlds, seeking release. The monster was their vessel, their instrument of vengeance. Sarah knew that she had to stop it. She had to find a way to close the portal, to sever the connection between the worlds, to silence the whispers forever. She started gathering supplies, preparing for a final confrontation. She bought weapons, maps, and ancient texts on Native American folklore. She knew that she was putting herself in danger, that she was risking her life. But she couldn't stand by and do nothing. She had to protect others, to stop the monster from claiming more victims. She drove back to the quick stop, her heart pounding in her chest. The fog was even thicker than she remembered, swirling around her like a living thing. She parked the car a safe distance from the store and walked towards it, her shotgun held tightly in her grip. The quick stop was deserted, the parking lot empty, the only sound the relentless wind and the whisper of the fog. She approached the store cautiously, her senses on high alert. She could feel the whispers, growing louder, more insistent, as she neared the building. She kicked in the door and stepped inside, her shotgun raised, her eyes scanning the darkness. The store was just as she remembered it, a mess of overturned shelves, broken glass, and scattered debris. The air was thick with the smell of stale coffee, gasoline, and something else. Something metallic and acrid that clung to the back of her throat. "Hello," she called out, her voice trembling slightly. Silence. She moved through the store, clearing each room, each aisle, searching for the monster. She found nothing. Then, she heard it. A scraping sound, coming from the basement. The basement. She had forgotten about the basement. It was a small, dirt-floored space used for storage, a place she rarely visited. She hesitated. Should she go down there? Was it a trap? But she knew that she couldn't ignore it. The monster was down there. She had to face it. She took a deep breath and walked towards the basement door, her shotgun held tightly. She opened the door and peered down into the darkness, the only light coming from a flickering bulb at the top of the stairs. The basement was damp and musty, the air thick with the smell of earth and decay. She descended the creaking stairs slowly, cautiously, her shotgun pointed ahead. As she reached the bottom of the stairs, she saw it. A figure, standing in the center of the room, bathed in the dim light. It was tall and gaunt, its features obscured by the shadows. The monster. "Hello, Sarah," it said, its voice a low, guttural whisper that sent chills down her spine. She raised her shotgun, her finger tightening on the trigger. "It's over," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm going to stop you." The monster chuckled, a chilling sound that echoed through the basement. "You can't stop me, Sarah," it said. "I'm already inside you." She froze, her blood turning to ice. What did it mean? Then, she realized. The whispers. They weren't just voices. They were a part of her. They were inside her mind, controlling her, manipulating her. The monster wasn't just an external threat. It was also an internal one. She lowered her shotgun, her hand trembling. She couldn't fight it. It was too strong. "Give up, Sarah," the monster said. "Let me take control. You know you want to." She closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. It was right. She was weak. She couldn't fight it anymore. But then, she remembered something. Something she had read in the ancient texts. A ritual, a way to sever the connection, to banish the evil. It was dangerous, risky, but it was her only chance. She opened her eyes, her gaze fixed on the monster. "I'm not going to let you win," she said, her voice filled with a new